not what I want to do in my business. I want to write products and help people make money. Amazon just generally doesn't want you to win. It's very easy to run an ad on Amazon, but it's very hard to run an ad profitably. And that's exactly where Stone's Good steps in. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today, we have Augustus from Orange Click. Augustus, thanks for being here.
Yeah, hi. It's really nice to be on your show. We connected for the first time. We have never talked before, so it's interesting to see what you're doing and how you help Amazon sellers as well.
Yeah. Well, what we like to do on this show is really kind of like dive deep on a specific topic. And I think today we're going to dive into events, especially in the Amazon space in 2026. But before we get into that, do you want to give people a bit of a background about who you are and why you're so credible to talk about this?
Yeah, so, well, maybe 15 years ago, I used to be a digital nomad traveling the world. Before it was called digital nomadism, I was traveling, hitchhiking actually, in Latin America with USB stick and programming websites in internet cafes. And then I was really kind of tired of programming activity, and I was looking what else I can do. And 9 years ago, I found two business models: is Amazon selling and virtual summits. Amazon selling, I kind of tried, I investigated, I read a lot of Facebook groups, but I had like literally just $500 or $600 to invest. And I found out like I cannot really start a business. And then I found a virtual summit business model where everybody says, oh, summits are for free and you make money. And I didn't get how you make money. And at the end, I implemented all the strategies they teach in the courses. And I did virtual summit about Amazon selling in Amazon Europe, because there was not so much information at that time. And I think it's still lacking information about European marketplaces. And yeah, I was the first in the industry to do virtual summit among Amazon private label sellers community. So I started to connect to like a lot of experts in the industry, software creators like Helium 10 and whatever. And yeah, I did one virtual summit, another one, and at the end, I created another in-person event. So now 9 years passed, and we did probably like 12, 14 virtual summits and the same amount of physical events. And we run amzsummits.com website where we publish all Amazon private label related events in US and in Europe. And this is basically, I'm scanning all the events possible in the industry so I can feel which are stable, which are useful to go, which are not.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a very, very deep background in events. So I think it's fair to say you're qualified to talk about this topic.
I would say like Orange Click is the only events company in this industry, because everybody in this industry, either Amazon sellers or service providers. And sometimes when the event pops up, usually it's created by a service provider because they think, oh, it's an easy way to generate leads. They make one or two events and then they quit because they see it's a hard work to make a proper event, to get quality audience and to make it profitable, which is not so easy.
Yeah, that's I can imagine that is a lot of work. So that makes perfect sense to me. Well, then with that said, like let's kind of get into it. Like, what's happening in 2026 when it comes to events? Because I think as we get more and more digital and more spread out as Amazon sellers, I feel like a lot of people are craving more of that in-person meetings. You know, I've actually had clients fly to San Diego and visit me. I really just think they wanted a vacation, but like people want to meet up. They want to meet in real life. And I think that anyone watching this probably wants to know what's happening in 2026, even if they're not going to go to every single thing you talk about.
Yeah, so with in-person event segment, I think many event organizers, you maybe not hear, you will not hear about events which are happening, let's say in autumn right now, because very often event organizers announce events or the dates just like 5 months, 4 months before the event. Because as I said, most of the organizers are not service providers. They just think, okay, now it's time to repeat my event again. Besides that, there are of course stable events which are happening every year, especially in US, like Prosper Show, Innovate, Europe, our organized event, European Seller Conference in Prague, and there are a few more like Danny Macmillan seller sessions, but it's like just very few which are stable. You know that if you go to that event, you can plan to go. If you liked it, you can plan to go next year around the same calendar time. But all other events is like a little bit random. You don't know, and they are unstable. Sometimes they repeat it after 1.5 or 2 years. But these are the events more like what you need a lot of organization to sell tickets and bring 150 or more people. We can also talk, there are events which are meetups, and there are a lot of meetups happening on our amzsummits.com website. We also have a menu item which is called local meetups. And there we scrape meetup.com website and we publish, like have a table with the free meetups happening a lot in US, in Europe. And there, of course, it's a little bit different level of events. This is more like community, one evening event for 2-3 hours or less, maybe with one speaker or just sitting in the bar. So they are a little bit different, of course, much easier to organize. And like, yeah, so depending on what is your goal or what you want to achieve and what kind of people you want to meet, you can choose these kind of events. Like, especially if you're a beginner Amazon seller and you have no yet money to invest to travel to Prosper Show and pay maybe a $600 ticket, you can search for a meetup next to you. And I think it's very powerful way to connect to other like-minded entrepreneurs which are doing the same and probably at your level. And then you connect
Yeah.
there, and then you put it to like a private space or to virtual space, and you continue conversating with these people.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. Why don't we give the audience maybe like for each of the levels, like a good idea of what an event, like a good event might be. So, for
Mhm.
example, why don't we do one for people who are just getting started, one for people who are selling and looking to grow, and one for people who are looking to meet other, you know, at least multi-million dollar
Mm.
Amazon business owners. Like maybe we kind of like chunk those out.
Yeah, so I guess for those who are beginners, so the most suitable events are those free meetups. But also, if you look at the like let's say conferences, which are 1 day or 2 days, I think obviously if your budget is low for traveling to events, there will be a lot of like cheap events between like $50 and $200 for 1 day, where you will go and you will understand what they are talking. If you are more established seller, probably you will look at I think the price is a very good filter for what kind of people are coming. For example, when we do European Seller Conference in Prague, people are paying in average 500 euros or $600 per ticket, and we get like almost 200 people. So these are already more than almost 80% of attendees are 1 million per year sellers. So they are 7-figure sellers. And I think about half of them are 5 million per year sellers, or 30%. So because we priced it higher, or like it's a middle price, so $600,
Hmm.
then they have to pay for travel, for accommodation. So they always invest like $1,000 or $1,500. So it's already a filter for beginners hard to enter. And
Hmm.
but these kind of events might not be interesting for what you said, very huge, sellers who already know everything. On the stage, they will not learn anything in such event for $600. So they are looking for these expensive masterminds, which cost maybe between $5,000 and $1,000. A lot. I don't know about all the private masterminds, but I believe like a lot of there are like which are private and they are not publicly announced. Possibly that maybe some sellers provider has like a close circle. For example, there is a PPC agency, Clear Ads, in the UK, and I know they are doing like every half a year some kind of mastermind, and it's never like published officially. They don't have a website. And yeah, if you can get access to this kind of events, it will be very, I think, powerful. I know Kevin King is doing something like this, but they are not so in team. Usually, I think his events
Hmm.
are $1 billion seller summit is maybe 100 people. So it's a little bit different feeling when you really want to communicate with everyone without a noise, where you could get like 20, 30 people, a private mastermind. So I think like this price is a good filter for what kind of level you should look for, depending on
Mhm.
your kind of and
Well,
level.
I think it's unfair to say that really big sellers wouldn't learn something at the 600 euro event. And the only reason I say that is because I've seen some of the speakers,
Yeah.
and I think like some of the speakers at these events can really bring very unique insights. So don't sell
Actually,
yourself short.
it's
Yeah.
good point. Actually, what I always say to other maybe like beginner sellers, when I observed successful sellers in my circle, I see that they don't stop learning. They would even listen free webinar to, like, even if it's like 1 hour, 90 minutes, they will search for this one sentence which bring them like profitable idea and strategy. So of course, if they go to the, let's say, middle priced conference, they will for sure find one or two nuggets to take home. And besides that, besides the content, of course, let's not forget the networking. And in person is the most powerful way to meet new people and to stick to them. Because if you meet online, you chat somewhere, it's not so fast to make friends. But if you spend the night with someone new, and there is a big chance that you will keep friendship. And I noticed this in our conference in Prague. There is like our conference in Prague is very international, like 35 countries, and out of 200 people, the biggest crowd is 20 people from one country. So 20 Americans, 20 Germans, for example. So it's very, very mixed. And what I noticed that we are now organizing this event in 2 months, and one group, they said, oh, we want to buy a group, like a tickets as a group. And I thought, okay, maybe it's a one company wants to buy 10 tickets. At the end, it was like when they bought 10 tickets, all these names I knew. They were like some guy from Romania, some from Lithuania, some from UK. And they just obviously having a mastermind. They met in our previous events. And now they are inquiring for group ticket, getting like
That's so funny.
discount. So it's nice to see that they are like making friends with each other and planning to come back to the event. So it's very powerful, yeah. And sometimes I don't know these stories most of the time. It's just like when I come to the event and sometimes somebody tells a story. Oh yeah, 2 years ago I met in your event this guy, and we are still like talking each weekly and so on, so on. And it's nice to see that these people, let's say, don't like they are still running the business. That's still successful, or still, or at least not declining. And it really helps these visiting events.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that is super cool. I think I want to shift gears a little bit because I really do agree that networking is one of the best ways and fastest ways to make good friends. And I think you also kind of pointed out like, look, the ticket price is going to be a really good determinant of what you like, which type of crowd you should be kind of like looking out for. I think what I'd love to hear a little bit more of from you is maybe like what types of events are happening. Like there are still sub niches within Amazon selling conferences. One example being Europe, but maybe another example is one that's really heavily focused only on Amazon ads. Maybe there's another one that's really focused on sourcing or supply chain, that kind of thing. So like, what are some of the different trends going on with events in 2026?
So what I noticed, there are not so many theme-based events. Very often it's just like general Amazon event and they bring speakers on different topics. Maybe advertising related events are the most appearing the most. For example, there is a Bidix, it's a PPC software, and now for like 3 years they're doing DSP Summit, where they talk about advertising DSP. They are doing it in Germany most of the time. In the very uh, beginning of our in-person events 6 years ago, 2019, I organized PPC Congress. I had an idea, like I was talking to one PPC, Amazon PPC guy who was running this service, and he said like, yeah, we are meeting online with other PPC specialists. And I thought like, why not to bring everyone together? So we did event in Amsterdam, 100 people, all from our PPC industry. We didn't repeat this event again because I was like not sure, yeah, for whom is this event exactly, because to bring all these specialists was a little bit, they also need motivation to come, and motivation for them is to get clients. But sellers are not very much going to this kind of advertising topic event because usually they have a, yeah, like maybe outsourced to a software or a PPC agency, their service, their advertising. So yeah, like PPC, I think the most common, which is like more niched. If it is like, let's say sourcing or very, let's say selling in Japan, it's like maybe like I know Gary Young is doing, try to do physical event in Japan about
Yeah.
Amazon Japan, but he did 2 times, and I think this year I haven't seen it scheduled again. Maybe it didn't work out very well. Sourcing, I haven't seen like events besides maybe some kind of, the sourcing trips. Then of course they
Hmm.
include all this education about sourcing. But most of
Yeah.
the time I would say maybe some events which I see in Europe, I haven't seen in US, more for first 1P vendors. So like for vendors and so there is one event in UK, Vendor Connect. So they are targeting exactly vendor companies. And also
Hmm.
there is a big brand or conference. It's only in German. In Germany, they do it like every half a year. Ticket is probably $1,000 and more for 2 days conference. And I know it's only for like big brands, not like a small sellers. And this also like more special event, but it's only in German. Maybe
Hmm.
another, like, let's say more, we can separate events which are like, let's say, you would come and you know what to expect, that it will be similar crowd like everywhere else. There will be similar speakers like everywhere else. But I believe in US, Innovate. The Amazon, they called in the past AMZ Innovate. Now they are calling themselves, I think, just Innovate. So
Yeah.
this event is done, I know, is done by sellers, $1 million sellers, and they are very often putting on the stage sellers. Maybe they are
Hmm.
not very good presenters, but for sure they give a lot of value. So I would like highlight this specific event, Innovate. It's happening usually in November in US, in New York, I believe. And this is, I would say, like different probably from even our event in Europe, where we usually invite speakers, which are service providers most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think that there's a lot of really interesting different angles you could use. I have heard good things about MDS. Some of our clients are in MDS. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. One of the things I wanted to ask you is geographically. Like, it seems like there are different trends going on when it comes to where people are having events from a geographic perspective. It does seem like there are a lot of events in Europe, and there's a lot of, like, either in London or, you have one in Prague. It also seems like there's a lot of events in New York or the greater New York area. But where are the events happening around the world? Yeah, and shout out to Gary. Gary Huang is actually a friend of the pod. I'm not sure if he's going to run an event this year in Japan, only because I think his wife recently had a baby. So
Second one.
that could be why that could, pretty good reason not to have an event. Yeah. But
And
yeah,
yeah,
where are things happening geographically?
so, of course, the ones which I see are in Europe and US because I don't see much about Asian events. Most of the time, they are maybe announced in their local language, Vietnamese or Thai or Chinese. So they don't come to my radar unless some international, especially US expert is invited there and they post on their LinkedIn or somewhere. And then I notice and then I kind of register this kind of event. But what I know about US, of course, most are in these crowded places like New York or Las Vegas and in Seattle, of course, because of the headquarters. Amazon is doing their events. I think in New York has a big community and there is this, let's say, community of especially Jewish Israeli sellers
Yeah.
and then service providers. So that there is like one event, ASGTG in Brooklyn. They
Hmm.
do it this year in March. I see they are changing always the dates. Like it's not very consistent. Usually it was in January, but now this year they're doing in March.
Yeah.
And Europe, we cannot say like events in Europe because Europe, there is no Europe like US. US, it's easy for a US person to travel from Florida to Seattle. I think like in the mind, like
Hmm.
you just take a flight, I don't know, 3, 4 hours and you are there. It's the same country.
Yeah.
But in Europe, even to fly 1,000 kilometers or miles from, let's say, France to Poland, it's a
Hmm.
big shift. There is probably might be a different currency, completely different language. So when, let's say, we are organizing event in Prague, there is like a little, we are promoting it in English language,
Hmm.
internationally, kind of online. So a lot of French or Spanish sellers, they don't see it because they don't look for information in English. Maybe they speak English, but they don't look simply for this. So for we cannot reach them. Germany is completely different bubble. Germany is so strong in their own events, their own softwares. If you will take a German seller and you will offer Helium 10 and some German made software, even if it's more expensive, they will prefer German made software.
Yeah.
So they have their own special bubble and community and events. But to be honest, I see like in Germany also, there are just like one or two events now stable, which are
Hmm.
happening. There are not so many events which are like every year. I think in US there are like maybe 4 or 5, like Innovate, ASGTG, there is Prosper Show, there is Sellers Summit in Florida. It's, yeah, not so many. And in Europe, there are some regular events in Germany, maybe one or two. Ours is regular. Danny Macmillan is doing seller sessions also in every May, but that's it. The problem that, yeah, nobody wants to do events, or if they try to do event, they see it's exhausting and not profitable. And
Yeah.
maybe they get a few clients, but it's not paying off because you need like maybe one person to work 2 months full time. So if you three
Hmm.
people, you split, but that means you lose your human resources for running an agency and serving clients when you start doing
Yeah.
events.
Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. So, I mean, that I feel like that's really well thought out. Also, something I forgot to mention, if anyone who organizes events sees this, there's a software called adevent.com, and they're a company that helps organizers get more people to show up to their events, like in-person events. So I meant to drop a quick plug for that company. Adevent.com is a great company. Now that plug's done, my wife works for that company. But yeah, it's just so funny. I realize, yeah, Adevent is a company that helps the organizers get the attendees to show up, because that's really what, coming back to your first point, and I think your biggest point is like in-person networking is the biggest opportunity. And so, or is the biggest opportunity to like really make deep connections with people. And so when I look at, you know, 2026 and the events that me and my team are looking at attending and investing and trying to build relationships at, I think one of the biggest things that jumps out at me is just the fact that, you know, you need to know what's out there. And I really appreciate Orange Click for kind of putting together different events and also putting together just information about what's happening. So I think what you guys are doing is really awesome. And I appreciate it because, you know, you mentioned before, like aggregating all this data doesn't necessarily make you a lot of money, but you do it to
Yeah,
help out the community. So thank you for that.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Augustus, just for people who are still here at the end, can you give everyone some information about where they can find you, what events you put on, like how can they interact with you on the internet? Can you give a quick plug so people know where to find you?
Usually there is no reason to interact with me personally because I don't coach, or I can, if you want advice on events, I would yeah, it would be my passion to share information and my opinion. But yeah, the best is if you just search Orange Click. Click is KLIK, and it's on YouTube or on the website. We have a website where we list our upcoming events. We do couple of events, handful. The biggest one is European Seller Conference in Prague. We get like almost 200 people from 35 countries. Very international. I traveled myself the world in the past for many years, and I know how important it is to open your mind with different cultures and different mindsets from different countries, because Eastern Europeans are raised with different values than US people. And I'm from Eastern Europe, from Lithuania, and I so much admire US business people. Like for them, it's so easy to get ideas. And for me, I feel like sometimes I'm lacking this kind of drive for how to get to the ideas and how to start the business. There are a lot of blocks for us Europeans. So I think you can get inspiration in such events where international people gather. So don't always go. It's a good point where only, let's say, Americans gather or only Germans. Try to find where You can get, or even if its majority is one nation, try to talk to attendees from different countries. And yeah, so search Orange Click, and I really encourage to visit amzsummits.com. It's a database of events mostly in Europe and America, and we manually add the events. And yeah, it's a good resource to when you are planning your year or your budget for attending events or even speaking. You can apply and search for what's happening in Europe and in US.
That's super cool. Again, thank you for doing that. It provides a lot of value to the community. And yeah, thank you for being willing to come on this podcast and kind of share all this information.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me. It was nice to talk.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks again to Augustus and the team at Orange Click. Everyone, or until next time, talk to you all
Bye
later.
bye.